You wake up with straw in your hair and a rat sniffing your ankle. Not a poetic metaphor, an actual rat. Congratulations. You're alive, in Paris, in the year 1789. There's shouting outside. There's always shouting. And the air smells like wet limestone, cabbage gone rogue, and just a hint of burning furniture. It's barely morning, but chaos doesn't keep a clock. Your stomach growls, which is impressive, considering how empty it's been for the past forever. Bread? A myth. Butter? Fantasy. A full meal? Treasonously optimistic. You crawl to the door, mostly because standing too fast makes your vision go sepia-toned. Outside, it's muddy, loud, and covered in people who look like they gave up hope 3 uprisings ago. So before we dive in, grab a blanket, maybe a glass of water, turn on a fan for the ambience, or the illusion of distance. And if this kind of twisted, muddy, history-soaked insomnia theater is your thing, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, but only if you mean it. No half-hearted revolutions here. You join the flow of bodies because saying no in a crowd like this is like trying to whisper during a riot. The energy is electric, if electricity was made of hunger, rage, and political pamphlets written in very angry French. Someone pushes a bayonet into your hands. You drop it. Not on purpose. It's just too heavy for someone who's been living on boiled shoe leather. They're talking about storming something. The Bastille, apparently. You nod as if that means anything to you. What is it? A prison? A bakery? You don't ask. Questions get people stabbed, and you're already dangerously close to being labeled suspicious just for blinking too much. A man with 3 teeth and an alarming amount of charisma climbs onto a barrel and screams about liberty. Everyone cheers. Then he says something about blood, and the crowd cheers louder. The march begins. It's more of a trudge, really. Feet squelch in the mud, voices echo off crumbling walls, and every few blocks someone shouts to the Bastille. Like it's a war cry or a very violent GPS. You don't know where you're going, but neither does anyone else. That's the magic of revolutions. Along the way, you pass a bakery with its windows smashed in. Inside, there's nothing left but crumbs and a chair someone probably mistook for a ham. You consider licking the floor but decide against it, not out of pride, but because you saw a dog do it first and he didn't look okay afterward. Children run barefoot, dodging horses and slogans. Old women mutter prayers under their breath like it's a language only they and death understand. You see a man wearing a bishop's hat and no pants. You don't ask. Everyone is unraveling in their own special way. By the time you reach the Bastille, it's less of a building and more of a metaphor. People throw rocks. Others scream. A musket fires. Somewhere. You duck, mostly out of habit. The guards inside look just as confused as you feel, like they weren't expecting to be the main characters in today's episode of National Collapse. Some brave, or suicidal, soul climbs the walls. The crowd roars. You try to look passionate, but you mostly look nauseous. The air is thick with smoke and slogans. Someone's crying. Someone's laughing. Someone's definitely bleeding. Eventually, the gates fall, or are opened, or abandoned. Nobody knows. It doesn't matter. The people flood in like they're breaking into a villain's lair, only to find dusty records and mold. There's no treasure, no prisoners worth writing about, just cold stone and disappointment. But none of that matters, because it's symbolic, and symbols, apparently, can make people cry, chant, and start a full-blown rebellion with nothing but adrenaline and a shortage of carbohydrates. A man hands you a flag. You hold it like a wet fish, unsure which way is up. Everyone is screaming about freedom now, as if screaming makes it real. You nod along, then realize you're dangerously close to the front of the crowd. You take 3 careful steps back and pretend to tie your non-existent shoelace. Someone climbs the ruins of the Bastille and shouts that the king will fall. Everyone cheers. You clap slowly, unsure if you're celebrating justice or just hoping for dessert. You don't even know what justice looks like. You just want a warm place to sleep and maybe something to chew that isn't your own dignity. As the crowd disperses, high on the fumes of destruction and potential, you realize you're hungry, cold, and probably an accomplice to something treasonous. Which, here, is practically a rite of passage. You shuffle home, or to whatever hole you temporarily occupy, with mud in your socks and revolution in your lungs. Paris is loud. Paris is alive. And Paris just blinked. You better not blink back. There's something unsettling about the way the sky looks when history catches fire. It's not the color, it's the movement. Thick, ugly smoke curling around rooftops like it's searching for secrets. You cough once, twice, then stop, because coughing in a crowd makes people look, and being noticed is dangerous. Especially now, when being too quiet or too loud can get you the same result. A permanent nap, guillotine style. You follow the smoke. Everyone does. Instinct, maybe, or curiosity, or just a lack of anything better to do in a city where food is theory and stability is dead. The street ahead glows orange, like hell decided to throw a parade. You don't ask what's burning. It's safer to assume it's everything. Someone laughs beside you, sharp, unhinged, too loud. She's holding a candlestick like a torch, eyes wide with the kind of joy you only get from destruction or very strong absinthe. They are burning the tax ledgers, she says. And you think, finally, something French people actually wanted to burn. The fire spreads fast. It dances across wooden beams, banners, crates of documents, and the occasional symbol of the old world. A portrait of the king, a velvet robe, a crucifix no one prays to anymore. The crowd roars with every crackle. This isn't a riot. This is an exorcism. Someone drags a gilded chair into the flames. Another tosses in a powdered wig. The symbols of aristocracy vanish one by one, swallowed by heat and spit out as ash. You wonder if revolution always smells like scorched perfume and rotting wood. Probably. A man starts singing. It's off-key, violent, and weirdly catchy. Others join. For a moment, it feels like a musical. A horrible, chaotic, fire-lit musical where everyone's understudying for the role of person who dies next. You hum along, hoping no one notices you're faking the lyrics. Someone shouts, "Bring the priest." You freeze. Not because you care about religion, but because the last time someone yelled that, they set the church doors on fire with the priest still inside. He survived, briefly. Then he got a trial, which was basically a very public way of saying not it. You edge away from the center of the chaos. That's where the flames are brightest and the attention deadliest. Instead, you drift toward the edge, where people sift through debris for anything useful. A spoon, a button, a shoe without blood on it. In this Paris, treasure is relative. You step on something soft and hot. It's a velvet banner with a golden crest, still smoldering. Above, the church bell tolls, not for mass, but for mourning. Or warning. Or maybe someone just felt dramatic. Paris is full of people doing things for the aesthetic, including death. The fire creeps toward a statue of Louis XIV, regal and utterly detached. Someone throws a rope around his neck. The crowd chants. You chant too, because pretending not to care gets you nowhere. The statue falls like a drunk nobleman, heavy, loud, and deeply disappointing. Children cheer. Adults cry. Someone proposes marriage. Someone else throws up. You stand there, surrounded by the pieces of a crumbling world, and realize you've just witnessed a funeral. Not for a man, for a system, for 1,000 years of powdered arrogance. Ash floats past your face. It sticks to your skin, your lashes, your breath. The world tastes like charcoal and accidental hope. You're not sure which is worse. A man with no shoes and too many opinions starts explaining how this fire represents rebirth. You nod politely while stepping away. Rebirth is beautiful, sure, but it usually comes after pain, blood, and a whole lot of regrettable speeches. Night falls. The fire dims. The crowd thins out, half drunk on ideology, half terrified by what they've unleashed. You stay a little longer, watching embers curl like dying ideas. There's no applause, just silence and the distant sound of boots on cobblestone. Eventually, you leave. The sky is darker now, smeared with smoke and stars that don't look interested. You walk past a ruined carriage, a burned sign, a broken violin. None of it mourns. None of it matters. The old world is gone. And you? You're just another pair of feet walking away from the fire, pretending you didn't help light it. You hear the words before you see the bodies. Liberty, equality, brotherhood. They echo down the alleys like a prayer you're supposed to know. But the tone is wrong. Too sharp, too rehearsed. Like someone's been screaming it long enough for the words to rot in their mouth. You turn a corner and there it is, the square. And in the center, the thing everyone pretends not to look at but never stops watching. The guillotine. Majestic. Efficient. A real overachiever. If carpentry had a god of death, this would be its altar. It's taller than you thought. Sharper. Cleaner. Somehow. And standing beneath it are two men with red sashes and absolutely no sense of humor. The crowd is already gathering. You don't know who's dying today. You just know it isn't you. Hopefully. Someone shouts a name. People cheer. Or jew. It's hard to tell. The condemned walks out. Calm, resigned, or just too tired to run. They always look smaller than expected. Like the weight of history already crushed their spine before the blade got the chance. You try not to stare, but your eyes don't cooperate. Watching executions has become a national pastime. Theater with stakes. No intermission. No refunds. Children sit on shoulders. Vendors sell wine and roasted chestnuts. The revolution, it turns out, has a snack menu. The man steps onto the platform. Someone reads a list of crimes. It's long. They always are. Theft. Treason. Thought crimes dressed as bad jokes. The list doesn't matter. The outcome's already decided. This isn't justice. This is punctuation. The blade falls. It's fast. No drama. No second chances. Just a sharp sound, a wet thud, and the sigh of a crowd that's seen this before. They don't cheer this time. They just nod. One less threat. One more name to forget. You feel your knees wobble. Not from pity, from fear. Because the list is arbitrary. Today it's that man. Tomorrow it could be the woman selling apples. Or the guy who made a pun about bread. Or you, for blinking weird in front of the wrong person. Someone near you mutters, "It's fair now." The guillotine doesn't care if you're rich or poor. You almost laugh. Almost. Because sure, the blade is equal. But the accusations? The whispers? The sudden disappearances? Those still play favorites. You slip away from the crowd, turning down a narrow street that smells like vinegar and something recently dead. Posters cover the walls, declarations, warnings, lists of enemies of the people. Half the names are crossed out in red. You don't want to know if it's ink or something warmer. There's a boy handing out pamphlets. He can't be more than 10. His eyes are hollow, his hands too steady. He doesn't blink when he says, "Read it." Or don't. They'll know either way. You take one. Not because you'll read it, but because not taking it feels like a decision. You pass a cart hauling away something covered by a tarp. It drips. You don't ask. A woman lights a candle in a window above you. She doesn't look down. No one looks down anymore. Eyes up, voice low, opinions buried like treasure no one dares to dig up. In the market, people whisper about Robespierre. Half call him a savior. Half call him a lunatic. Everyone agrees he's listening. And that's enough. You nod when you hear his name. Always nod. Always agree. Disagreement is a luxury for people with fewer necks to protect. You buy a potato. It's soft, bruised, overpriced, and you treat it like gold. The vendor doesn't smile. No one does. Smiling implies you know something, and knowing things is dangerous. Back home, if you can call a basement with mold and 3 spoons a home, you sit in silence. You peel the potato with a knife that's seen better centuries. And as the peel curls like a whisper, you wonder if liberty always comes with this much silence. You hear footsteps outside. You freeze. They pass. Not tonight. Not yet. You exhale so slowly you forget what breathing normally feels like. Your fingers tremble, not from fear, but from the exhaustion of never letting it show. You stare at your reflection in a cracked bit of metal. Your eyes are dull. Your mouth a straight line. Your face, a shape carved by survival. You mouth the words, liberty, equality, fraternity, like a password you're not sure still works. And somewhere deep down, you wonder, what if we got the slogan right, but the revolution wrong? You hear it before you see it. That metallic slide. That soft click. That final, wet punctuation mark at the end of someone's sentence. The guillotine doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. Its fame spreads faster than bread rumors in a starving city. And its nickname? The National Razor. Cute, right? Like it's shaving France clean, one neck at a time. It stands in the square like a monument to efficiency. Tall, red-stained, dignified in a way that makes you feel judged. It doesn't blink. It doesn't hesitate. It just drops. And in the silence afterward, you hear the city exhale. As if another threat has been erased. As if justice has been served on a silver blade. You wonder who designed it. Not because you want to thank them, but because the symmetry is terrifying. The lines, the curve, the speed. Whoever built this wasn't trying to kill. They were trying to impress. And oh, did they succeed? At first, the blade shocked you. Then it entertained you. Now, it's just there. A program with no plot twist. You've eaten pears while heads rolled. The true horror? You didn't flinch. They say it doesn't hurt. Too fast. Too sharp. You're dead before your brain knows it. But no one really knows. And you're not in a rush to confirm the theory. You walk a little slower now. Nod a little more. Agree a little harder. Just in case. There's a man in your neighborhood, used to recite Voltaire in the square. Now he sells onions. He doesn't talk much. But when he does, it's about how quiet everything's gotten. Not the streets. The people. The thinking. As if the blade shaved off curiosity too. You hear rumors of new laws. Lists growing longer. Trials getting shorter. Juries looking more like execution lines. You keep your thoughts folded up inside you like smuggled contraband. Even your sighs feel dangerous. Someone you knew is gone. Just gone. No trial. No explanation. Their house is locked. Their name, erased. The razor doesn't just cut flesh, it edits memory. At night, the dreams come. You're always on the steps, always barefoot, always trying to remember your last words. But the crowd is laughing, or screaming, or chanting something you can't understand. And then, the slide. The click. The fall. You wake up gasping into silence. You start counting your words during the day. Which ones you said. Who heard. Whether you smiled at the wrong line in a speech. You tell yourself it's caution. You know it's fear. The guillotine doesn't discriminate. That's the lie everyone tells. But the truth is simpler. It just doesn't care. It doesn't need to. That's what makes it powerful. And terrifying. And weirdly, comforting. At least it's honest. One afternoon, you pass the square and it's empty. No blade. No blood. Just the platform, quiet and bare. It should feel like peace. It doesn't. It feels like a deep breath before the next scream. You walk on. You keep your head down. Literally. Just in case. Because in a country this sharp, even shadows can bleed. And the walls? They listen. They remember. Your neighbor, the one who used to hum while sweeping, gone. No warning. No goodbye. Just silence. Then a new family moved in. Smiling too much and asking too little. You offered them salt. They asked where you got it. You didn't answer. You haven't offered anything since. The new game in Paris isn't chess. It's surveillance. Except no one's officially playing. Everyone just watches. Who comes, who goes, who hesitates before answering the door, who still reads, who still dreams. You catch yourself pausing before windows, not looking out, but looking at. Is someone watching? Always. Probably. The curtains twitch. A silhouette leans. You wave. They don't. You tell yourself it's nothing. Then you move your bed farther from the wall, just in case. Once, someone knocked. Just once. No follow-up, no voice. You froze for 2 full minutes, hand hovering above the doorknob. It was probably a mistake. Probably. But now you flinch every time someone walks by too slowly. Or not slowly enough. They say the prisons are full. Overflowing. Brimming with citizens who said the wrong thing at the wrong volume to the wrong baker's cousin's friend. You stop talking in bakeries. You nod, smile, overpay, and leave. Communication is now a luxury item. Like soap. You go days without speaking. Not because there's nothing to say, but because there's nowhere safe to say it. There's a man on your street who walks his dog every morning. Except he doesn't have a dog. You counted. Twice. He just walks. Listens. Records things in his head. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. You still nod. Just in case he's testing. That night, you rehearse your answers to questions no one has asked yet. Where were you on Thursday? Why did you hesitate when someone praised Robespierre? What did you mean by strange times? You rewrite your own conversations like they're evidence in a trial you're losing. Someone leaves a basket at your door. Inside, bread, cheese, and a note with no words. A gift? A trap? You stare at it for an hour. You eat the bread. You burn the note. You bury the cheese. Paranoia isn't paranoia if it keeps you alive. At the town square, names are read aloud. Loud enough for everyone to hear, but fast enough to blur together. You listen for yours. You always listen for yours. Not hearing it is relief. And dread. Because maybe it's coming tomorrow. Children play differently now. No more stick swords or princess games. They mimic trials. They build little wooden guillotines. One shouts, "Enemy of the people." Another shouts, "Defend yourself." Then silence, then laughter, then back to silence. You pretend not to notice. You start writing letters you never send. To no one. To yourself. To whatever part of you still remembers what it was like to speak freely. You hide them in the wall. You forget where. You try to forget why. One day, someone points at you in the market. Just for a second. Just a small gesture. You freeze. Did they mistake you for someone? Did they recognize you from somewhere? Did you say something? Wear something? Think something? That night, you don't sleep. You sit with your back to the wall and listen to the building breathe. Footsteps above. A cough below. A door creaking open. Not yours. Not yet. But every sound feels like an accusation. The next morning, your reflection looks different. Not older. Not sadder. Just thinner. Not in body. In presence. Like part of you has already gone missing. Quietly, efficiently, without a trace. You never used to think about color this much. But now you scan every thread before you leave the house. Red is bold, too bold. Blue is revolutionary, unless it's the wrong shade. White is pure, or royal, or both, or neither. The rules change faster than you can get dressed. Shoes are dangerous now. Polished? You're bourgeois. Worn? You're a patriot. No shoes? You're either a hero or a beggar. Possibly both. You scuff yours on purpose. Then rub mud on them for good measure. They squeak anyway. Treasonous little bastards. You hear about a woman arrested for wearing silk. Not because it was silk, but because she smiled while wearing it. That's the real crime now. Confidence. You learn to walk like a guilty person. Shoulders low, eyes down, face like a half-erased note. Getting dressed is now an act of politics. Too plain, you're hiding. Too polished, you're rich. Too green? You don't ask. Symmetry is suspicious. Confidence is criminal. And your shoes? Traitors with every squeak. You spend a full morning deciding between two shirts that are the exact same color. One has a button. The other doesn't. You rip the button off, just in case. It feels like making a choice between being forgettable or unforgettable. You choose survival. There's a rumor about a man who wore lace cuffs and said it was his grandmother's. They let him go. 2 days later, someone else tries the same excuse. He disappears. You stop wearing your grandmother's anything. You never liked her that much anyway. You see a poster declaring wigs counter-revolutionary. Then another declaring baldness a threat to morale. You stare at your thinning hair in the mirror and consider a hat. Then remember the feather incident. You settle for dirt. At executions, you start noticing patterns. The ones who dress well die faster. The ones who dress plain get more silence. The ones who cry about fabric die alone. You take notes you'll never write down. You meet someone who wears all black, all the time. He says it's for mourning. For what? You ask. For everyone, he says. You nod. It's the most honest answer you've heard in months. One day, you put on a coat and feel immediately unsafe. It's too fitted. Too clean. Too remembered. You swap it for a shapeless sack of a thing. It smells like mildew and despair. Perfect. You see children playing dress-up. But they're not pretending to be kings or knights. They're pretending to be accused. One ties a rope around his friend's wrists. The other shouts charges. They laugh. Then they stop. The laughter always stops too soon. Your reflection becomes your stylist. You stare long and hard, asking silently, is this the outfit of a traitor? Is this the face of a survivor? The mirror never answers, but it judges. Eventually, you stop caring about how you look, not because you've found peace, but because fear has its own fashion and you're wearing it daily, stitched in sweat, panic, and barely contained breath. You leave the house in rags. On purpose. Not because you want to, because they're harder to stain with blood. You wake up with the taste of nothing. Again. It's been weeks since a proper meal, and months since your last real bite of joy. You dream of food now, not feasts, just bread. Soft, hot, unsuspicious bread. The kind that doesn't require a lie to earn or a bribe to keep. The lines start early. You shuffle into one before asking what it's for. Could be grain. Could be soap. Could be someone reading names. Doesn't matter. If people are waiting, you wait. That's the rule now. Someone says there's flour coming. You squint at the cart approaching. It's mostly empty. The driver looks terrified. You don't blame him. A hungry mob is scarier than any soldier, because soldiers follow orders. Hunger doesn't. You inch forward. Behind you, a child cries. Ahead, a woman clutches a coin like it's a weapon. The man beside you whispers that he ate rat yesterday. He says it without shame. You nod as if you understand. You do. You just don't want to. When you reach the front, there's a man handing out sacks. You hold out your hands. He shakes his head. Finished. One word. One sentence. One verdict. You consider screaming, but you need your voice for begging later. You walk away slower than you arrived. Not from disappointment. You're used to that. It's the dizziness. The kind that makes your knees forget they exist. You sit on a stone step and pretend it's on purpose. Later, you find half a cabbage in a gutter. It's soft, bruised, and smells like regret. You eat it anyway. You don't chew. You swallow fast, like you're hiding evidence from the gods of dignity. You once paid a man 3 buttons and a poem for a crust of bread. He gave you a rock. You ate it anyway. Not all of it. Just enough to feel something. The rest sits in your pocket, smooth now from being touched too often. One day, someone throws a potato into a crowd. No explanation. Just tosses it. 5 people dive. 2 bleed. 1 wins. He runs away clutching it like treasure. You watch, expressionless. You used to be shocked. Now you're just calculating odds. Someone roasts chestnuts on the street. You approach. The vendor watches your hands more than your face. You ask the price. He laughs. Not at you, just in general. The kind of laugh that ends with go away without needing to say it. Once, you stole a turnip. From a garden. From a child's hands. You don't feel guilty. You don't feel anything. You just remember the crunch. Sharp, earthy, alive. It was the best thing you'd eaten all year. A rumor spreads about a woman who ate her dog. People whisper it with fascination, not horror. You wonder if she cooked it. You wonder what part she saved for last. You wonder how many people have already done worse. Hunger isn't poetic. It's bone-sucking, belt-chewing, dignity-killing. You once traded buttons for bread and got a rock. You ate it anyway. Not all of it. Just enough to remember what not starving used to feel like. And when night comes, and your stomach feels like a forgotten drum, you lie down and whisper a prayer. Not for food. Not even for strength. Just for morning to come fast. So you can try again. Night doesn't fall anymore. It descends. Like a curtain. Heavy. Wet. Reluctant. And behind it, not peace. Not rest. Just more waiting. You lie down with your eyes open. Not because you're not tired. You're always tired. But because closing them feels like surrender. The floor creaks even when no one walks on it. The walls breathe. The ceiling murmurs. Or maybe that's your brain, replaying every word you said today like a court transcript in slow motion. You can't remember what was safe and what was a mistake. You hope they sounded the same. Your candle burns too brightly. You snuff it out. Darkness is less conspicuous. You breathe quieter. You move slower. You curl into yourself like a letter trying not to be read. There's someone in the hallway. You hear them breathing through the wood. Or maybe it's your own breath bouncing back with too much imagination. Either way, you stay still. If they're listening, let them hear nothing. Someone's crying. Not sobbing, just that thin, leaky kind of cry that slips under doors and seeps into dreams. You recognize it. It sounds like you, 2 weeks ago. Or tomorrow. Hard to tell. Misery doesn't wear a watch. You try counting backwards. From 100. From 1,000. You lose track. Your brain keeps interrupting with headlines, whispers, executions, rations, footsteps. The greatest hits of your unraveling. There's a bang in the distance. Wood splintering. A door kicked in. Somewhere else, but close enough to feel it in your chest. You don't move. You don't pray. You just wait for the scream that never comes. Someone knocks. In your dream. Maybe. You sit up anyway. Heart pounding. Ears straining. Nothing. Maybe it was real. Maybe you're losing the difference. Maybe that's the plan. Night doesn't fall anymore. It closes in. Every creak is a footstep. Every breath feels recorded. You rehearse lies in case someone asks why you dream too loudly. Sleep is no longer rest. It's risk. Your dreams betray you. You're always in line. Always being called. Always looking for someone to lie for you. Your legs don't work. Your mouth is full of ash. The sky is red. The blade is falling. You wake up with your hands clenched. Nails dug into your palms. You unclench. Slowly. Like peeling away pieces of a person you used to be. The rooster crows. A weak, exhausted sound. Even he's over it. You sit up. The air is damp, sour. Your joints crack like old wood. Another night survived. Another miracle. Another curse. You light a new candle. Your hands shake. The flame flutters. You stare into it. Not for warmth. Not for light. Just to prove that something, anything, still burns. The streets feel different now. Not quieter, heavier. Like the ground itself remembers too much. Cobblestones that were once just cobblestones now seem to flinch beneath your feet. Every step feels like an intrusion into someone else's ghost story. You pass a square where children used to chase chickens. Now, it hosts public trials. Fast ones. With choreography. Accusation. Gasp. Verdict. Applause. You stop watching after the third time. Not because it's horrifying, but because it isn't anymore. The market's still open. Barely. Sellers with trembling hands arrange wilted vegetables like they're preparing an altar. Buyers nod. No one haggles. Even transactions are funerals now. There's a woman who dances in the street every morning. No music. No rhythm. Just movement. Some say she's mad. Some say she's mourning. Some say she's both. You watch her one morning. And for a second, you understand every step. You pass a couple arguing in whispers. Their fight looks rehearsed, like a play with no audience. Maybe they argue to feel alive. Maybe they argue to drown out the silence that keeps asking, will it be you next? The posters change every day. New names. New enemies. New slogans. You recognize a face once. Not well. Just enough to remember that he used to play the violin outside the bakery. Now he's labeled dangerous. You wonder if he ever finished that song. Someone tries to start a joke in a tavern. It lands wrong. The room tightens. Glasses stop mid-air. You laugh anyway. Too loud. Everyone turns. You freeze. They look away. You live. Barely. You see a procession pass by. Not a parade. Just bodies wrapped in cloth, carried like afterthoughts. No one cries. No one protests. Grief has become too expensive. People save it for later. Or never. Your friend invites you to a gathering. Just a few people. Talking. Sharing. You decline. Talking is dangerous. Sharing is suicidal. You make up a lie. He nods. You both know what that means. He stops inviting you. At night, you hear someone playing a flute. The notes are soft, unsure. You sit by your window and listen like it's the last voice left in Paris. Then it stops. Abruptly. You don't sleep that night. One morning, the baker waltzes while sweeping. 3 steps, spin, bow. He sees you watching. Shrugs. Old habits, he says. You don't respond. You just buy your bread and pretend it tastes like something. A cat follows you for days. Gray. Silent. Observant. You name it luck and hope it doesn't leave. On the 4th day, it disappears. You find its body behind a barrel. No wound. No explanation. Just gone. Like everything else. There's a man who paints on walls at night. Symbols. Faces. Sometimes just hands. They get washed away by morning. But you see them. And for a moment, you remember that not all art is propaganda. You dance once. Alone. In your room. Just a few steps. Your legs protest. Your ribs crack like tired floorboards. But for 10 seconds, your body remembers something older than fear. Movement without purpose. You hear bells. But not church bells. The kind that mean something's over. Or just beginning. You don't ask which. You just stop walking and wait for the sound to finish swallowing the sky. One day, someone grabs your hand. Pulls you into a crowd. Chanting. Flags. Momentum. You move because it's safer than standing still. You shout words you don't believe, because silence is louder. A girl with no shoes twirls beside a bonfire. Her dress is suit and string. She laughs, then stops. Someone calls her name. She runs. You never see her again, but the sound of her spinning stays. The streets become a stage, and everyone's a performer trying not to be noticed. Every action rehearsed. Every smile edited. Every step calculated. You trip once. People look. You apologize to the air. You don't remember the last time you sat without tension in your shoulders. The last time your hands weren't clenched. The last time your legs moved for anything but survival. But your heart still beats. And that's its own kind of dance. You wake up to silence. Not peace. Just nothing. The kind of stillness that smells like burnt paper and missing people. No boots in the street. No names on the wind. The city feels like it's holding its breath. Or maybe it exhaled and forgot how to inhale again. Robespierre is dead. Just like that. The man who whispered justice through clenched teeth is now missing his head. No trial. No speech. Just another body in the cart. They say he screamed. You hope he did. You hope the blade hesitated. You hope the ghosts were watching. The posters have changed. Fewer slogans. More space. You stare at one, expecting to see your name. You don't. You're relieved. Then disappointed. Then relieved again. You've forgotten how to feel just one thing at a time. In the square, the guillotine is still there. But no one looks at it. It's like a bad relative at a funeral. Too familiar to discuss. Too shameful to ignore. The wood is darker now. Not from paint. From memory. You hear people whispering again. Not about enemies. About survivors. Who made it? Who vanished? Who changed their name? You think about changing yours. Again. Maybe something softer. Something that doesn't echo when shouted from a platform. The lines for bread are shorter. But so are the loaves. The famine didn't end just because the speeches did. You choose slower now. Not because of manners, but because you're afraid of finishing. Someone opens a tavern. Plays music. A real song. With rhythm. With melody. People freeze mid-step. A child drops an apple. Someone starts to dance. Then stops. The song ends. No one claps. But no one reports it either. You pass the tailor's shop. It's empty. A mannequin stands in the window, wearing a coat too bright for these streets. You stare at it. It stares back. You both know it won't survive the week. There's a man preaching at the corner. Not about God. Not about law. Just sense. Common sense. His shouting about bread and taxes. No one stops him. No one joins him. You don't know if that means the terror is over, or if it's just asleep. You get used to the new normal. Again. No more executions. Just disappearances. No more speeches. Just edits. The revolution is tired. but still watching. Like a dog that's been beaten too long to bark, but still remembers how to bite. Your neighbor reappears. Thin, quiet, smiling in the wrong places. You don't ask where he's been. He doesn't ask if you missed him. You nod at each other like two people who survived the same shipwreck, but don't want to remember the water. They say things are better now, but no one defines better. The fear is quieter. That's all. Like a wound that stopped bleeding but never closed. You see children playing again. Real games. With sticks and fake crowns. One of them says, "I'm the king." Everyone freezes. You watch. One kid throws a rock. Another joins. The king falls, laughing. But the laughter doesn't last. It never does. You hear the word republic again. Said with less conviction. Like a joke too old to laugh at. Someone says the word monarchy. Someone else spits. The future is a coin spinning in the air, and everyone's too scared to call heads or tails. You dig through your old things. Letters. Pins. A folded flag you pretended not to own. You go home. You boil water. You drink it like tea. You stare at the wall for a long time. Not because there's something on it. Because it's still there. You don't sleep. Not really. Just rest with your eyes closed. Listening to a city that used to scream, now whispering in its sleep. And before the silence swallows you whole, you ask the only question that still matters. Did we win? Or just survive? And somewhere, not far from that silence, a woman picks up a pen. Not a sword. Not a banner. Just ink and audacity. Because surviving, for her, was never the endgame. She wanted more. She wanted logic to make room for justice, and revolution to make room for women. And for that, she became dangerous. You're born inconveniently female. That's your first offense. Your second, you have opinions. Loud ones. And the third, the real crime, you write them down. In France. During a revolution. With your name on them. Bold of you, really. Your mother wanted you to marry a butcher. You married one instead. He died. You didn't cry. You called it freedom. Society called it suspicious. Widows were supposed to weep, not breathe deeper. You rename yourself. Olympe de Gouges. Sounds elegant, doesn't it? Almost noble. Almost safe. But it isn't. Nothing about you is. Least of all your pen, which never shuts up. You start with plays. They boo you. Then you write pamphlets. They burn them. So you write louder. About slavery, about injustice, about women who bleed and think and dare to expect more than polite invisibility. You're not asking for a crown. You're asking for a chair at the table. Maybe a fork. Maybe a knife that doesn't come with a metaphor. But even that is too much. They don't want your voice. They want your silence, curated, pressed, and folded into a skirt. While the men shout about libet, you whisper equality. Then you say it louder. Then you scream it. And that, apparently, is when it becomes treason. You publish something called the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen. Because someone had to. Because someone always has to. It's brilliant. It's bold. It's absolutely not what the men had in mind when they said all citizens. People read it. Or pretend to. Some cheer. Most frown. A few take notes. None forget. You've officially crossed the invisible line. The one between provocative and unbearable. You walk into salons where women aren't supposed to speak and leave with everyone quoting you. Not accurately, of course, but enough to make them nervous. And nervous men make dangerous choices. You suggest that women should have the right to divorce, to vote, to raise their children without ownership papers from their husbands. You might as well have asked to set the Louvre on fire and dance in the ashes. Still, you keep writing, because it's all you've ever had. And because when the world tries to crush you, the only logical response is to spell your name in capital letters on every wall they haven't banned yet. People call you dramatic, hysterical, pretentious. You nod and ask them to spell it correctly, if possible. Then you quote Rousseau back at them, but better. Men start avoiding you in public, which is fine. Women start following you in secret, which is better. You become something dangerous, not just loud, contagious. One day you stand in a square and read your latest piece, out loud, without trembling. You pause for effect. People stare, not with admiration, with calculation. You feel it shift. The crowd, the tone, that slow turn from attention to resentment. The way silence stretches just long enough to become threat-shaped. Someone calls you bold, like it's an insult. You thank them, then publish another pamphlet. Your name starts appearing on lists. Not the good kind, not the kind with prizes. The other kind, the kind that come with shadows and missing neighbors. You go home. You keep writing. The ink doesn't hesitate, but your hands do. Just once. Just long enough to know what fear tastes like. Still, you write. Because if you stop now, they win. And frankly, they don't deserve the last word. You don't wake up thinking you'll change history. You just wake up angry. Again. The kind of anger that sits behind your ribs like a cat sharpening its claws. It's not loud, not theatrical, just permanent. You watch men sign their Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. They beam. They pose. They cheer each other like they've just cured injustice with a quill and a wig. You read it twice. Then a third time. No mention of women. Not even a metaphor. So you sit down. No trumpet. No spotlight. Just you, your ink, and a chair that wobbles because even furniture doesn't take you seriously. You begin, woman is born free and remains equal to man in rights. There. You said it. Now the fun begins. You don't ask for permission. You don't ask for approval. You write because no one else will. You write because your silence would be more violent than your voice. And you sign it. With your full name. Because this isn't fiction. It's defiance. The document grows. Paragraph by paragraph. Right by right. You build a manifesto like a staircase. Each step daring the world to follow. You write of marriage as a contract, not a trap. Of mothers as guardians, not wombs on loan. Of women as citizens, not decor. When you're done, it doesn't feel brave. It feels necessary. Like breathing. Like bandaging a wound the Republic hasn't even acknowledged. You don't think of danger. You think of clarity. That's your first mistake. You distribute it. Quietly at first. Then louder. You print copies. You slip them under doors. You leave them in cafes. You watch men's faces tighten as they read. That's how you know it's working. They call it provocative. They call it unhelpful. They call it amusing. But none of them call it untrue. That's the part that bothers them most. Not that you wrote it, but that you're right. You get invited to speak at salons again. Not because they support you, but because they want to watch you fail in real time. You don't. You hold their gaze. You quote their own philosophies back at them, but dressed in a different voice. A feminine one. A dangerous one. One man tells you women aren't suited for politics. You ask if he's suited for thinking. He doesn't respond. He leaves early. You count it as a win. The backlash begins. Slow, then fast. Your mail goes missing. Your name gets mentioned in the wrong circles. Someone accuses you of inciting rebellion. You reply, "I thought that was trendy now." You're warned, quietly, to stop. You nod, smile, and publish another essay. This one angrier. This one better. You write a piece directly to the Queen. Not to beg. Not to flatter. To challenge. You tell her that power without justice is just well-dressed cruelty. The monarchy calls you disrespectful. You call it balance. Some women thank you. Some scold you. Most stay silent. Not because they don't care, but because they know the cost of being loud. You carry their silence like armor. You begin to walk differently. Slower. Eyes up. You start to notice who steps aside for you, and who doesn't. You memorize escape routes. You learn to write faster, sleep less, trust no one who says, "I admire your courage." At night, you reread your own words. Not for validation. For certainty. You need to believe them even if no one else does. Especially then. You hear your name whispered in cafes, in doorways, in police reports. You become a footnote people try to erase while pretending to quote. You keep a copy of your declaration hidden in your coat. Folded, worn, still loud. You carry it like a weapon. Not to attack. Just to remind the world that you were never asking for permission. You were giving notice. You arrive at the meeting late, which is fine. No one expected you to show up at all. You're a woman, after all. And worse, a woman who writes. A woman who thinks politics isn't exclusive to powdered wigs and testosterone. You take your seat. No one offers it. You pull it out yourself. Loudly. The floor creaks. The room freezes. One man coughs into his pride. You smile. Not out of warmth, out of calculation. They speak in circles. About virtue, about order, about liberty being sacred and efficient when guarded by the right kind of men. You raise your hand. It hangs in the air like a question no one wants answered. You suggest that perhaps women, you say it calmly, should be allowed to participate. Just a little. Not to overthrow. Not to dominate. Just to be heard. Like humans. Like citizens. The silence that follows is so sharp you wonder if it cuts someone. Someone laughs. Not kindly. "Madam," he says, "politics is a battlefield." You nod. And men are losing it. No one laughs. You didn't expect them to. The meeting ends early. You walk home slower than usual. Not because you're tired, because you're thinking. About how every word you say stacks itself like firewood. And how the spark is never far behind. Later that week, they bar women from the galleries. From the clubs. From the very places where decisions are made. You're told it's for safety. You wonder whose. You write about it, of course. You always do. You write about representation. About how revolutions can't be male-only if they claim to speak for the people. You underline the phrase. Twice. You know they'll notice. The backlash doesn't explode. It seeps. Friends stop writing back. Printers hesitate. Strangers recognize you in ways that don't feel flattering. You begin to walk with your chin slightly lower, not in shame, but to see who's following. There's a performance one night. A tragedy. You're not invited. You go anyway. You sit in the back, surrounded by whispers dressed as perfume. You don't stay for the end. You already know how tragedies conclude. The woman dies, and everyone claps. At home, your pen stutters for the first time. Not from fear. From fatigue. You write anyway. Not essays. Letters. To no one. To everyone. To the version of you who still believed words were armor, not invitations to bleed. You hear about new laws. Not official. Just enforced. Women shouldn't gather. Women shouldn't speak. Women shouldn't linger near questions. You begin to wonder if breathing too deeply might soon be categorized as sedition. You reread your earliest plays. They're naive, hopeful, foolish. You smile at them like you would a childhood drawing. Not because they were wrong, but because you no longer recognize the softness in your own handwriting. Still, you keep showing up. Not to win, just to remind them you're not gone yet. It starts with a missed handshake, a familiar face on the street who suddenly forgets your name. The kind of forgetting that doesn't come from memory, it comes from survival. You used to be invited everywhere. Now the invitations stop. Or worse, they arrive late, after the event, with a polite note that reads like a threat in cursive. You still RSVP, just to make a point. Your allies become polite. That's how you know they're leaving. Politeness is how people say, "Don't drag me down with you," without ruining the upholstery. You still attend salons, but now you sit closer to the window. Not for the light, for the exit. A journalist once praised your courage. Now he prints rumors. Subtle ones. Clever ones. The kind that sound like concern but smell like strategy. "Is she unwell?" he writes. "Has ambition clouded her reason?" You cut it out and save it. Not out of vanity. Out of spite. Robespierre's name starts floating near yours in conversations. Not as an ally. As an audience. You've said too much. You've written too well. And men like him don't like being outwritten by women who don't ask for permission. One by one, the revolutionaries you once admired begin to mutate. Their speeches get longer, their ears shorter, their patience thinner. You wonder when the dream died, or if it was ever alive. You try to reason with them, quietly. Letters, private conversations, careful phrasing. It doesn't work. They hear dialogue and see resistance. You hear liberty and smell smoke. Even your supporters start hesitating. "Now's not the time," they whisper. "Wait for calmer waters." You want to ask them when, exactly, revolutions become calm. But you're too tired to waste metaphors. You still write. You always will. But now you sign with a smaller hand. Folded corners. Fewer copies. You've learned that bravery is easier when no one's watching. And much harder when everyone is, but pretends not to be. You pass a man who used to call you brilliant. He stares straight ahead. Like your heir. Like you never taught him how to spell equality. You fight the urge to wave. Someone accuses you of seeking fame. You smile. "If I wanted fame," you say, "I'd have agreed with you." He doesn't get it. That's fine. Most people don't hear insults unless they come with punctuation. You start referring to yourself in the third person when you write. It's safer. And lonelier. But it creates just enough distance to keep your hand steady. You don't stop trusting people. You just stop expecting them to stay. And that, somehow, hurts more than being betrayed. The heat creeps in without asking. Not the weather, the atmosphere. Paris doesn't feel like a city anymore. It feels like a pot left on the fire with the lid clamped shut. Every window sweats. Every street hisses. You stop going out at certain hours. Not because it's dangerous, it's always dangerous. But because the air gets thick with shouts that don't belong to any one person. Just collective rage, looking for a throat. The crowds grow bigger. Not happier, just louder. They march with signs, with drums, with slogans that repeat like a curse. They chant liberty like it's a war cry, and justice like they're daring someone to disagree. You try to speak, not to the mob, to the individuals within it, to the girl with bare feet, to the man with the broken hat. You say, "We want the same thing." They nod, but their eyes don't focus. They're not here for nuance. Panic becomes fashion. Everyone wears it, tightly fitted around the chest. You learn to dress down your voice, to iron your tone, to hem your opinions at the ankles. A man screams in the square. No one stops him. No one argues. They just join. That's how it works now, not with logic, but with volume. Whoever shouts longest wins. You begin to wonder what the revolution is fighting for anymore. It started with ideals. Now it smells like meat left in the sun. You write that down, then burn the page. Some metaphors are too accurate to be safe. Bread disappears from shelves. People blame the merchants, then the bakers, then the rich, then each other. It becomes clear that hunger doesn't need proof, just direction. You see a woman beaten for not removing her hat during a speech. You see a boy dragged away for laughing. The city has grown allergic to joy. You try to remember the last time you laughed. Not politely, loudly. You fail. One night, a neighbor knocks. Whispers, "They're coming." Doesn't say who. Doesn't need to. You wait by the door, heart silent, breath quiet, pen in hand. They don't come for you. Not that night. Which somehow makes it worse. You start keeping your papers in 3 places. Your satchel, your drawer, your memory, in case they find the first 2, and you're forced to rewrite your innocence from scratch. Someone burns a pamphlet you wrote. Publicly, proudly. The flames are modest. The message is not. You walk away, cheeks hot, fists colder. The noise becomes relentless. Not from violence, from repetition. The same slogans, the same accusations, the same faces pretending to be different every week. You stop listening. You start memorizing silence instead. You see Robespierre speak. Up close. He doesn't look like a tyrant. He looks like someone who's been awake too long and can't remember the sound of his own doubt. That's what makes him dangerous. Not confidence. Certainty. The guillotine appears more frequently in conversation. As a solution. As punctuation. As a way to end arguments that have too many syllables. You wonder how many revolutions it takes to break a city. Then realize the better question is, how many people have to be broken before it counts as a revolution? Paris smells like sweat, ash, and something ancient. Something old that's been dug up again. Not history, but hunger. For justice. For revenge. For meaning. You can't tell them apart anymore. You go home, take off your shoes, and write a single sentence. We asked for freedom. They gave us a fever. You write it in one night. No drafts. No edits. Just fury poured into paragraphs. You don't sip wine. You don't pause for clarity. You don't care how it lands. That's how you know it's good, because it's not trying to be liked. It isn't a poem. It isn't a proposal. It's a provocation. An open letter to reason itself, dragging moderation back into a conversation that forgot it ever existed. You call for dialogue, for peace, for sanity. You suggest, gently, that maybe not everyone needs to die for the revolution to live. That maybe justice doesn't have to come sharpened. That maybe Robespierre isn't a prophet, just a man with a mirror and a knife. You sign it, boldly, like always. Full name. No shame. You know exactly what you're doing. You just don't know who's going to read it first. The pamphlet spreads fast. Too fast. Faster than anything else you've written. It finds its way into salons, streets, pockets, paranoia. And everywhere it lands, it lights a fuse. Your friends go quiet. The ones who still talk at all say things like brave and ill-timed. The others avoid eye contact. Like your name is contagious. Like you've become radioactive in a city that already glows red with fear. A man stops you in the street. says, "You've gone too far." He doesn't look angry, just disappointed. Like you ruined a party by reminding everyone the house was on fire. You go home. The door feels heavier. The ink on your fingers stains everything you touch. You wash them 3 times. The water stays pink. That night, you hear footsteps. Close. Precise. Then the knock. Not a neighbor's knock. A knock that already knows your name. They arrest you without ceremony. No crowd. No shouting. Just cold hands and colder silence. Your neighbors pretend not to notice. The ones who do look relieved. No one cries. They don't let you bring anything. Not your pen. Not your notes. Not the pamphlet that caused this. You leave like smoke, visible, but untouchable. And then, gone. The cell is small. Predictably, the air smells like sweat, piss, and forgotten arguments. You sit on the floor because dignity doesn't fit on a stool. They question you. Not really. They talk at you. Quote your own words back with the tone of a priest dissecting sin. You ask for a lawyer. They laugh. You ask for paper. They frown. You ask for water. They shrug. You speak anyway. You recite your pamphlet from memory. Every word. Every sentence. It doesn't change anything, but it reminds you who you are. And that, for now, is enough. One guard calls you clever. Not kindly. Like cleverness is a disease. You thank him anyway. He doesn't respond. At night, you sit with your back against the wall and whisper your own words into the dark. Not because you're scared. Because they're all you have left. You ask for a lawyer again. This time they don't laugh. They just ignore you. Which is worse. At least mockery implies recognition. Silence is what they give to things already considered dead. They tell you the hearing will be swift. You already knew that. Nothing slow survives in this Paris. Not meals. Not love. Not justice. You're brought into the room. Not a courtroom. A room. A table. 3 chairs. No audience. No pretense. Just procedure, dressed up in tired coats and fake formality. They read the charges like they're bored. Enemy of the revolution. Sedition by ink. Sympathy for tyrants. None of it surprises you. You've been called worse by better. You ask to speak. They nod. Barely. Like they're granting a dying wish. You stand. You breathe. You begin. You speak clearly. Calmly. Not because you believe they'll listen, but because you need to hear yourself one last time. You explain your writings. Your intentions. Your hopes. Your faith. Not in monarchy, but in meaning. One judge looks uncomfortable. Just for a second. A twitch near the eye. Then it's gone. Replaced by stone. Or guilt. Hard to tell. You remind them that revolutions eat their own. You say it softly, as if it's a lullaby. One man shifts in his chair. Another clears his throat. No one writes anything down. They interrupt you. Politely. Formally. Fatally. Your time is up. They have enough. They had enough before you entered the room. The sentence is declared. You listen without flinching. Not because you're brave, because you're tired. Tired of being measured only in volume. Tired of hoping intelligence could pass as obedience. They ask if you have any final words. You say, I already wrote them. They don't appreciate the poetry, but it's not for them anyway. Back in the cell, you laugh once. A short, sharp sound. You surprise yourself. Not because it's funny, but because there's still something inside you left to escape. They bring you your execution date. Paper. Ink. You almost thank them. The irony is beautiful. You finally get to write again. You write a letter to your son. Short. Honest. unapologetic. You don't say goodbye. You say, continue. You write one final declaration. Not for posterity, not for glory, just because the words were still there. You refuse to die without a sentence of your own making. They take it from you. They probably won't read it. But now they'll carry a piece of you. Ink under their nails. The morning comes too soon. It always does when you're not ready. And let's be honest, whoever is, they let you dress. A kindness, they think. A ritual, really. As if linen can protect you from steel. As if dignity has a dress code. You choose white. Not for purity. Not for irony. Because red would have been too obvious. And because they already stained your name, they don't get to stain your clothes too. The guards don't speak much. They move around you like you're made of glass and gilt. You wonder if they drew straws for this assignment. You wonder if one of them read your work. The cart is smaller than you imagined. Creakier. It smells like yesterday's sentence and someone else's fear. You sit upright. Not out of pride, out of spite. If they want a spectacle, let them have posture. The streets are familiar. That's what hurts. You pass the bakery where you once wrote in the window light. The cafe where someone called your ideas amusing. The alley where a stranger once whispered thank you and disappeared before you could smile. People line the road. Not cheering. Not crying. Just watching. Eyes like shutters. Hearts like doors nailed shut. You search their faces for recognition. For regret. For anything. You don't find it. The platform appears slowly, like a rising tide of wood and inevitability. The blade gleams in the sun, smug and polished. You admire the craftsmanship. It's efficient, unlike everything else in this revolution. You climb the steps without help. You want them to know that even gravity couldn't keep you down. The executioner says something. You don't hear it. You're too busy listening to the air, how it shifts, how it holds its breath with you. You look out over the crowd. You don't speak. You've already said everything worth saying. If they didn't understand it in ink, they won't hear it now. You kneel. Not in surrender. In choreography. There's a difference. And it matters, even now. The wood is cold. The straps unnecessary. You hold still on your own. Someone coughs. A bird screams. The city blinks. Then the blade drops. Fast. Familiar. Final. But not quiet. Because silence doesn't follow you. Words do. The next day, the city breathes like nothing happened. The streets wake up. Bread is sold. Shoes are shined. People shout about politics with mouths still stained from yesterday's silence. Your name isn't on the lips of the crowd. It isn't on the posters. It isn't even on the execution list anymore. You've been filed under done. No speech. No memorial. No plaque. Just an emptied cell and a blood-stained plank hosed clean before breakfast. The newspapers don't bother with you. A paragraph, maybe, tucked between new trials and old lies. They mention a certain female agitator. As if you were a smudge. As if you were never sharp enough to draw blood. Your books are pulled quietly from shelves. Not banned, just misplaced. Forgotten on purpose. Buried under safer stories. Tales where women learn their place and speak only in chapter breaks. The revolution continues. It always does. Loud. Hungry. Busy congratulating itself for another head removed. They say it was necessary. They always say that. No one walks to the guillotine site with flowers. There are no tears, no candles, no initials carved into stone. You don't get mythologized. You get deleted. But something strange happens. One night, a girl reads something. A line from a pamphlet she found folded in her mother's apron. She doesn't know your name, but she feels the sting of the sentence. It makes her sit up straighter. A man finds a draft of your declaration in a drawer he was told to burn. He reads it twice, then hides it again. Not out of fear, out of awe. He doesn't tell anyone. But the paper isn't ash. That's something. A boy copies one of your lines onto the wall behind his school. It gets painted over. He writes it again. You become an echo. Not a roar. Not a statue. Just a hum in the wrong corner of the right room. The part of history that refuses to shut up. They try to erase you, but you're in the footnotes now. In the hesitation before someone says everyone. In the question that ruins the comfortable version of events. You live in margins. In smudges. In voices that speak just a little too loudly in rooms they weren't invited to. You don't have a monument. You have something worse. A legacy they couldn't clean up. You're not taught in schools. Not really. Your name is too sharp, too inconvenient. You don't fit neatly into the chapters reserved for heroes. You don't die the right kind of death, the one that makes people comfortable. Still, your words survive. Not because someone protected them, but because they wouldn't stop echoing. Because truth has this awful habit of outliving everything designed to silence it. A girl finds your declaration in a dusty archive. Reads it. Blinks. Reads it again. Her teacher moves on. She doesn't. That's how it begins. Your sentences appear in new mouths. Rearranged, translated, repackaged, but still yours. Still pulsing. Still louder than the systems that tried to erase the hands that wrote them. A historian gives a lecture about forgotten figures. Your slide number 8. Brief. Uneasy. Half the room writes your name down for the first time. One of them underlines it. There's a play. Not yours, but inspired. A woman on stage says something about justice and gets interrupted. The audience laughs. You would have too. Timing was always your weapon. Your grave is unmarked. No statue. No flowers. But your name is carved into margins now. In hidden syllabi. In angry footnotes. In the pause before someone says no one warned us. Years pass. Centuries. Revolutions grow. Collapse. Regrow. Your writing never ages. Only the people reading it do. A lawmaker references you once. Carefully. A journalist quotes you without credit. A teenager copies one of your lines into her diary and feels something crack open. Your name resurfaces. Not in parades, in questions. In essays. In fights that haven't finished. You don't haunt people. You challenge them. A museum hangs your portrait next to a man who voted for your execution. No one says it out loud, but the room leans toward you. Eventually, someone builds a statue. Small. Modest. It doesn't feel necessary anymore. Your legacy was never made of stone. It was made of ink. You don't need statues to be remembered. Sometimes, you just need someone to listen. And centuries earlier, in a place where marble cracked under the weight of hope and incense curled like prayers trying to grow legs, people came not to be remembered, but to be healed. Not by doctors, by gods. Or so they believed. Welcome to Epidaurus. You don't walk in. You limp. You stagger. You drag yourself through dust and daylight, clutching whatever part of your body you believe is failing first. No one asks why you're here. They already know. You're broken. And you believe. The road is long and deliberately cruel. By the time you reach the sanctuary, your knees are negotiating a surrender and your dignity has already moved on. That's part of the process. The gods don't like arrogance. Especially the ones with snakes. A priest in linen robes greets you without warmth. He gestures to a fountain. You drink. It tastes like old coins and divine indifference. Then he points to a bench. You sit. Your legs exhale in relief. Your soul doesn't. You came here for healing, but no one mentions cures. Only rituals, purifications, dreams. You nod like you understand, even though you've barely eaten and your insides feel like they're being soothed by your other organs. The air smells like olive oil, incense, and something damp pretending to be sacred. You start to wonder if pain has a shape. Maybe it looks like a temple. A woman next to you is muttering to herself. She clutches a bundle wrapped in cloth. It moves. You pretend not to see it. This is a place where pretending is polite. A boy runs past you with a snake draped around his shoulders like a divine scarf. No one stops him. No one screams. Here, snakes are holy. You try not to read into that. You're led to a stone basin and told to bathe. The water is cold. Of course it is. The kind of cold that slaps your ancestors. You strip. You submerge. You question every decision that led you here. Later, shivering and damp, you're handed a tunic that smells like history and mildew. It clings to you like regret. You wear it anyway. Night falls. Or maybe it just gives up. You're guided to the abaton, the sleeping hall. They say this is where the gods whisper cures through dreams. You lay down on stone warmed by centuries of sweat and superstition. You're told not to speak, not to move too much. The gods are busy, apparently. Healing is delicate work, like embroidery or blackmail. Around you, others toss and murmur. One man sobs. Another laughs in his sleep. You wonder which one is closer to healing. You stare at the ceiling. It doesn't stare back. Instead, it waits. Heavy and cracked and older than your language. You begin to drift. In your half-sleep, something slithers nearby. Not metaphor. Not symbolism. Something real. You freeze. You pray. You hope it's the god. And just before sleep eats you whole, you realize, this is not medicine. It's theater. But maybe, just maybe, that's what you needed all along. You don't meet him. You observe him. From behind incense and fear. His carved in stone, painted on walls, whispered in rituals. A man with calm eyes, a beard too perfect for nature, and always that staff with a snake curling up like ambition with scales. Asklepios. Not quite a god. Not quite a man. Somewhere between myth and malpractice. The priests speak of him like a cousin who became CEO of immortality. A healer so talented even death had to renegotiate her terms. They say he once brought a man back from the dead. And Zeus, being the drama queen he is, struck him down with a thunderbolt. Because nothing says thank you for your service like incineration. You begin to wonder, are these miracles or marketing? The temple walls tell stories, not in words, but in images. Crude carvings of bent backs straightening, eyes opening, wounds sealing, always with Asklepios nearby, always serene. Too serene, like someone who never had to pay taxes. You light a candle. It sputters. You whisper his name. The flame steadies. Your breath doesn't. A priest offers you a token, a small clay foot. You ask what it means. He says it's for healing your actual foot, or maybe your metaphorical one. You nod like that helps. Offerings pile around the altar like desperate post-its. Little arms, eyes, kidneys, even clay uteruses. All left behind by people who prayed hard enough to sculpt their pain. You add nothing. Not out of pride, but confusion. What part of you would you leave behind? You touch the staff. Not the real one. That's long gone. This is a replica, worn smooth by centuries of hopeful fingers. You feel nothing. Then again, maybe that's the point. You look up at his eyes, painted high on the wall. They don't blink. They don't move. But somehow, you feel judged. Not for your sickness, but for your hesitation. You step back. Your tunic clings. The air thickens. And for the briefest second, you think you hear something. A hiss. Not angry. Not dangerous. Just present. Like something ancient, tired, and still watching. You thought it was just a sanctuary, a temple, some priests, maybe a few snakes. But it's a city. A full-blown, incense-scented, God-haunted city. And everyone here is either limping, preaching, or selling something soaked in olive oil. There are no tourists, only pilgrims. Each one carrying a body that betrayed them and a hope they can't quite explain. Hope, it turns out, smells like sweat and time. Vendors line the dusty paths with potions, powders, talismans, and things that used to be animals. You don't ask what anything costs. The real currency here is desperation. Children play with clay figurines of gods. One smashes another's statue. The mother gasps like he broke the real thing. Maybe he did. There are rules here, but they shift like smoke. One day you must fast, the next you must feast. One priest says sleep is sacred, another says it's indulgent. You nod at both. You've learned to agree quickly and question later. You pass by an older woman placing a tiny bronze uterus at the altar. She mutters something about barrenness, curses, and figures. You feel like you've eavesdropped on a prayer not meant for mortal ears. A man with no teeth sings hymns in a voice that could peel olives. He wears nothing but a belt and conviction. You envy him. Not the look, the clarity. A healer offers to bleed you. Not metaphorically. He shows you the knife. You decline. He shrugs and moves on to someone braver or more gullible. Every wall is carved, painted, etched with reminders of what pain looks like when it asks for mercy. You start to wonder if healing is even the point, or if everyone here is just addicted to ritual. At night, the city doesn't sleep. It hums. Fires crackle. Voices murmur. Somewhere, a drum beats like a slow heartbeat. You try to match your breathing to it and fail. You visit the theater. Yes, there's a theater. Because even the sick need entertainment. A tragedy is being performed. It's hard to tell where the story ends and the audience begins. A man next to you vomits during Act 2. No one reacts. You offer him a figure. He eats it like it's the first thing he's tasted in months. Maybe it is. There's a public latrine. You use it once. You never return. You now understand why the gods demand offerings. They're clearly not spending it on plumbing. You see lovers, too. Whispers in corners. Hands touching in ways that make you forget where you are. Even in sanctuaries, people find ways to feel something other than pain. A priest tells you the city was founded on a dream. Not a metaphorical one, a literal, sleep-induced vision. You ask if that's reliable. He says, "It's worked this long, hasn't it?" You spot a man carving a votive offering with missing fingers. You ask what happened. He smiles and says, "Bad offering last time." You don't know if he's joking. He doesn't either. The sick come here not just to be healed, but to be seen. To be surrounded by others who also carry invisible weights. And for a moment, that feels like medicine. You realize something. No one here expects to leave cured. They just want to leave changed, or remembered, or less alone. And maybe that's what the city offers best. Not salvation, but witness. You're not seated. You're staged. Every cough, limp, and moan is part of a performance you didn't audition for but somehow got the lead in. Welcome to Epidaurus, where your agony is both affliction and entertainment. The theater isn't hidden. It crowns the hill like a stone crown for a god with a flair for acoustics. And the acoustics, let's talk about those. You can whisper a confession from the stage and someone halfway to the horizon will flinch. People gather not to laugh, but to feel, to be moved. Because in a city drowning in real pain, fiction is the only thing that tells the truth. The play begins. It's always a tragedy. Of course it is. No one wants comedy from a place that smells like fermented bandages and holy anxiety. On stage, a father sacrifices his daughter. The audience gasps, not because it's shocking, but because it's Tuesday. You watch the actors bleed beautifully. They sob with precision. They collapse in poses sculpted by centuries of rehearsal. It's heartbreaking. It's calculated. It's cathartic. Beside you, someone prays mid-scene. You wonder if they're praying for the character or themselves, or if they even see a difference anymore. You're told the theater is healing, that watching others suffer releases something toxic inside you, that your body, overwhelmed with emotion, forgets its own pain. It sounds like a scam, but for a few minutes, it works. You forget your joints, your fever, the creeping suspicion that none of this is real medicine. You just feel big, beautiful, messy feelings. And then, emptiness. The good kind. An old man beside you sobs with abandon. When the curtain metaphorically falls, he wipes his face and limps away straighter than before. Maybe healing doesn't always need bandages. Later, a priest explains, the stage is sacred. The stories are sacred. And pain, when shared publicly and performed elegantly, becomes something close to divine. You want to scoff, but you don't. Because deep down, part of you agrees. Or wants to. You wonder if Asklepios watches these plays. If he has a favorite actor. If he ever laughs. If gods get bored of petitions and sneak off to matinees. The actors bow. The crowd applauds like their hands could cure leprosy. You clap too. Not because it's expected, but because something inside you has shifted. Slightly, gently, enough to notice. You walk away lighter, not healed, just unburdened. A little. You remember the words of one of the priests. To cry with strangers is holier than to pray alone. And for once, you don't roll your eyes. Because maybe pain, when spoken aloud and painted across a stage, becomes something else. Not smaller, not gone, just bearable. You try to sleep. Not in your bed, those don't exist here, but in a communal hall that smells like dried herbs and collective fear. The kind of place where silence has texture and dreams are mandatory. The priest told you not to eat, to purify, to prepare. So now you're starving and sacred. Congratulations. The floor is cold. The blanket scratchy. The mat thin enough to double as a philosophical metaphor. But you're here, lying on stone, surrounded by the coughing, the sobbing, and the snoring faithful. Above you, a painted ceiling of stars. Not real constellations, just guesses. But still, it feels cosmic. Like someone tried to turn this tomb into a planetarium of hope. And then, snakes. Real ones. Holy ones. They slither quietly between dreamers, drawn not by scent, but by sorrow. You're told they carry messages from Asklepios. You're also told they don't bite. You decide not to test either theory. One brushes against your ankle. You flinch like a heretic. The priest nearby nods in approval. Apparently, that was progress. Eventually, sleep comes. Not gently. It drags you under like a priest with a grudge and a baptismal font. You dream. Everyone does here. That's the point. You're not just healed through medicine. You're healed through theater, ritual, and REM cycles with divine guest stars. In your dream, A man with no face touches your chest and mutters something about balance. He smells like olives and thunder. You wake up gasping, or laughing. Hard to tell. A priest asks what you saw. You tell him. He nods sagely and writes something on a wax tablet. Probably mild insanity, possibly prophetic. They call this incubation. Like you're an egg, waiting to hatch into a slightly less miserable version of yourself. You see others wake up screaming, or sobbing, or laughing like goats that learned Latin. Some are embraced. Some are ignored. Some are taken aside. You don't ask what happens to those. There are no prescriptions. Only interpretations. No pills. Only puzzles. Your body is a metaphor, and your diagnosis depends entirely on someone else's dream literacy. You start to understand something uncomfortable. No one here expects certainty. Healing is vague on purpose. Ambiguity keeps the faith alive. Someone tells you the gods speak most clearly in confusion. You believe them, mostly because clarity has stopped returning your calls. By midday, you've been anointed, interrogated, hugged, and told your bile is too hot. You're not sure if that's a diagnosis or an insult. Either way, you nod. You feel lighter, not because you're cured, but because someone took your pain seriously, even if they blamed it on dreams and divine reptiles. You leave the hall blinking at the sun, unsure if anything has changed. But for the first time in days, your limp is half a step behind you. You're led to water. Not metaphorically, though everything here could double as a metaphor if you squint. Actual water. Warm, murky, smelling faintly of sulfur, time, and poor decisions. This is the sacred spring. The priests say it was blessed by the god himself. You suspect it was just the only spot that didn't flood. You undress behind a curtain that's more concept than fabric. Modesty isn't banned here. It's just impractical. The floor is slippery, but you're too tired to care. You slide in like a poached pear into ancient broth. It's not luxurious. It's confusing. The temperature is somehow too warm and too cold at once. Your skin tingles, then itches, then relaxes like it gave up. A woman next to you rubs clay on her arms and whispers a hymn to her liver. You pretend that's normal. You even try it. Your hymn is off-key. Your liver remains unimpressed. Priests walk by, occasionally tossing herbs into the pool like seasoning a stew. One throws in something red. You don't ask. You're learning. You feel things leaving your body. Stress. Doubt. Possibly part of your last meal. The water takes it all and gives nothing back, which feels oddly fair. Someone begins chanting. It echoes beautifully. You don't know the words, but your bones seem to. You hum along. Your joints ache less when they're distracted. Then comes the massage. Not with oils. With stones. One placed on your chest. Another on your forehead. They don't move. Just sit there. Heavy. Honest. As if to remind you you're still here. The priest calls it weight therapy. You think it's just gravity with branding. But it works. You feel grounded. Crushed slightly, but grounded. Next, you're handed a tea. It's bitter. Alive. Possibly sentient. It tastes like regret and rosemary. You drink it all, because saying no here feels like blasphemy. Someone begins to sing again. This time, a lullaby. For whom, you don't know. Maybe the water. Maybe you. You close your eyes and float for a moment. Not because it's blissful, but because you're too relaxed to resist. In that stillness, you realize something. No one has asked how you feel. Not once. Because here, healing isn't a conversation. It's a sequence. You're not better, but you're cleaner, calmer. Your skin hums like it was plugged into something sacred. And as you leave the bath, wrapped in linen that smells like sun and surrender, you realize, sometimes surrender is the treatment. They ask you to stand, not for judgment, for presentation. Apparently, you're ready for the observation circle, which sounds innocent enough until it starts. You're in the center, surrounded by priests, by patients, by statues who look more alive than some of the humans here, and all of them watching. You're not naked, but you might as well be. The linen robe you're wearing was designed by someone who hated privacy and sleeves. A priest circles you like his selecting fruit. He hums. He squints. He nods solemnly, as if your spleen just confessed a sin. He touches your wrist, not to take a pulse, just to make a point. You feel like a scroll being read by candlelight. Another priest joins. He taps your back, your knee, your soul. You're not sure what any of it means, but everyone else is nodding as if this is standard procedure. Someone in the crowd whispers, "He's imbalanced." You'd agree, but you're not sure if they mean physically, emotionally, or cosmically. A third priest, the serious one, with the eyebrows of doom, makes a gesture. A diagnosis is coming. You brace for Latin, or lightning. Instead, he says, "The liver remembers." Everyone nods again. You do too, out of fear, or fashion. They write something in wax. You catch a glimpse. It says shadowbound, which either means you're cursed or edgy. Either way, you're kind of into it. Someone places a wreath on your head. Laurel, maybe, possibly just weeds. Either way, it feels ceremonial. Or itchy. You're told the gods see you now, fully, which sounds lovely until you realize it also means they've seen everything, including that thing you thought about 3 days ago. The ceremony ends. You're clapped on the back, blessed, possibly mocked, definitely exfoliated. As you walk away, someone tells you, visibility is a kind of healing. You nod, though part of you thinks invisibility sounded safer. You sit alone afterward, processing, reassembling, wondering if being seen means being understood, or just labeled better. You realize no one's laughing at you. They're not even really looking anymore. You were a moment. Now you're memory. Welcome to temple life. You're different now. Not cured, but catalogued. Claimed by the ritual, filed under watched and witnessed. And in a place like this, that might be the most sacred thing of all. You start noticing things. Not divine things. Not signs or omens. Just silence. Lingering like fog that forgot how to leave. The temple is still full. People cough, chant, dream. But something's off. The dreams are shorter. The chants quieter. The priests look tired in a way that even robes can't hide. You ask a question. About your pain, maybe, or your shadowbound diagnosis. The priest smiles, the same way a parent does when they've run out of explanations and patience. You're told to be patient, to trust the process. But the process feels like being gently forgotten in a marble room. Someone next to you stops showing up for rituals. They say the god hasn't spoken to them in days. No visions, no snakes, just sleep and silence. You find them sitting by the sacred spring, whispering apologies into the steam, as if the water might forgive what the gods no longer notice. Another patient leaves. No farewell, just gone. Their mat rolled up, their cup still half full of rosemary regret. Whispers begin, not of miracles, but of absence. Some say Asklepios is testing them. Others say he's moved on, found a better sanctuary, a younger temple. A priest delivers a sermon about faith. It's vague, warm, useless. You nod anyway, because disagreement feels like blasphemy. Or worse, impoliteness. The snake doesn't visit you anymore. It used to curl near your feet. Now it slithers past like you've become furniture. You try to force a dream. You fast, you chant, you rub olive oil on your temples like a mythic salad. Nothing happens. Just darkness and your own breathing. One night, in frustration, you whisper directly into the marble wall. Say something. The wall says nothing, which is still more than you expected. You wonder if the silence is personal. If maybe the god found you unremarkable, unhealable, unworthy of divine drama. The truth? No one knows. The god never explains. And the priests pretend they don't notice the quiet creeping in like mold on a holy scroll. Eventually, you stop asking. Not because you've found peace. Because you're tired of echoing inside your own questions. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the silence is part of the ritual. Not absence, but the final phase, the sacred shrug of indifference. You wake up one morning and don't feel better. But you also don't feel lost. Just real, unblessed, undramatic, alive. And in a temple built on dreams, maybe the most divine thing you can do is stop waiting for a god who already listened and left. You wake up to packing sounds. Not your own. Someone else is leaving. Their sandals slap against the stone like punctuation marks you haven't earned. You sit up. Your mat is thinner. Or maybe you are. The robe smells like old sun and quiet decisions. You fold it, not out of duty, but because there's nothing left to unfold. No one tells you to go. That's not how things work here. You just feel it. Like a season turning. Like a song ending without applause. You walk the grounds one last time. The columns don't nod. The statues don't blink. But they all seem to know. You pass the spring. The water is still steaming. Still sacred. Still unaware of your name. That feels honest. Almost comforting. The snake doesn't come. But you leave a crumb anyway. Just in case faith works retroactively. You find your sandals. They don't fit quite right anymore. Your feet, somehow, learned a new shape while standing still. The priests nod as you pass. Not with warmth. With recognition. Like fellow survivors of a dream that overstayed its welcome. You want to say something. Thank you. Or maybe, I tried. But no one asks for closure here. The healing wasn't the answer. It was the asking. At the gate, you turn around. The temple is smaller than you remember. Less divine. More real. Like all holy places when you're no longer bleeding. You don't feel cured. You feel clean. Not like scrubbed skin. Like a page that was read, marked, and turned. Outside, the road waits. It's not paved. It doesn't promise anything. But it's yours now. And for the first time, that feels like enough. The sun is indifferent. The air smells like dust and distance. You take a breath so deep it almost feels like choice. You walk. Not because you know where you're going, but because staying means pretending you still need fixing.